Welcome to the broadcast. This is the Health and Wellness Panel, and we have an amazing group of people, and we're going to be having really a profound conversation as we create this movement for restoring people and their health and wellness and transform the chronic states of toxicity that have really left a lot of people sick physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And we really just believe wellness starts with awareness and awareness of lifestyle choices and ultimately how they impact our well-being. So this amazing group of people, which you'll get the chance to hear from, and they'll introduce themselves in a second. Um, they created with us this video, so we're going to share this short video, and then we'll get their introductions.
What fascinated me most about relationships is the study that relationships are the number one indicator of well-being and happiness. So how do we have better relationships? How do we have better quality relationships? How do we go deeper in the relationships that we're already in? And by no means am I an expert in my own life. I am still human. I get triggered. I screw it up completely. But the thing I do know is how to repair.
And most of the time we're operating in what's called high beta consciousness, which is you're stressed out, you're kind of putting out fires, dealing with crises. That's kind of like having multiple tabs open on your computer and just not closing them and then thinking that the computer will behave optimally, which I've been guilty of myself. Like my father is actually a software engineer, and he's always reminding me, close some tabs, like don't have too many programs running on your computer. And that's similar to when clients tell me, oh, I just have so many thoughts in my head, I just can't get out of my head.
That there is hope. On one hand, there is hope. People can change. I see it, I saw it for many, many times with so many different of people. But we need to work. And it's not like working hard. Sometimes it's the opposite. We need to let ourselves go back to our true self. Go back to our nature. And if we went very, very, very far from our nature, it will be tough and long journey. But everyone, as I see it, I believe in that we were born with the right nature, with the right self. So there are parts in ourselves that know how to go back.
It's just my philosophy, but everything that you're doing won't make a difference if you're not being kind to yourself while you're doing it. It's really critical, it's not just a nice thing to say. It actually, your thoughts and your words create worlds, and those are the worlds that you live in. And I don't create ugly worlds for myself to live in, because I like beautiful worlds to live in.
So those are the people we're going to hear from today. And now you're really going to hear from them. They're each going to take about 90 seconds to introduce themselves, what they do, and how they got into this field. So Ronnie, would you like to introduce yourself first? And by the way, Ronnie's from Israel, so we want to thank him for being with us on a Saturday night in Israel.
Great to be here with all of you. So my name is Ronnie Maizish. I'm a clinical social worker and psychotherapist. I'm working in the field of the emotional aspect of obesity for the last 15 years. I have helping many, many different of people with their emotional eating, emotional hunger, emotional starvation, topic like the psychology role of the fat. I feel that, my work is a mission. I was a fat child and I struggled with my obesity, my overweight for many, many years. And just when I become 30, something was, becoming different with my thinking, with the way I handle my emotional. So I really feel that I'm very lucky to be in this field and meet many, many patients and professionals. And I feel this is my duty to find more professional like everybody here and think about how we can change, the statistic of the obesity, that only 3% of people can change their life and really live healthy life, and their changes can be very, very long changes. So I'm very happy to be here, and I will speak more in the later.
Thank you, Ronnie. Marina, please introduce yourself.
I'm Marina, and I'm also a licensed clinical social worker like Ronnie here in the US, in Florida to be precise. And I'm a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, certified integrated nutrition health coach, and certified Kundalini yoga and meditation teacher. And I like to integrate, the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and the emotional piece all together. I consider myself a holistic and integrative therapist. And the main problem I believe I solve for people is helping them attain emotional liberation. And this is a problem that's close to my heart because I have struggled with anxiety and depression for almost my entire life. And I know what it's like to suffer, and to be in those low points and to be at the effect as opposed to the cause of what's happening. And I think emotional liberation is key to having a healthy control of your life, so that regardless of whether there's a pandemic in the world or not, we know how to feel calm and peaceful at any moment.
Awesome. Thank you, Marina. Yeah, those are good topics about emotional liberation, and we'll definitely get to break into that topic. Danielle, would you please introduce yourself next?
My name is Danielle. I have been in the wellness field for about 19 years, and I work with women who are over 40 who are wanting to feel more fulfilled and connected in their relationships. Whether they're in a relationship or whether they're not in a relationship, they want to feel more fulfilled and more connected and develop more intimacy. So I basically teach the things that our parents didn't teach us about relationship and how to have fulfilling and flourishing relationships. So I'm a relationship coach.
That's great. Yeah. And you always remind us about how important relationships are and the most central part of health and wellness. So that's exciting that we'll get that perspective today.
Thanks, Nathan.
Eli, our panelist warrior who's with us all day.
Thanks, Nathan. So I'm Dr. Eli Heimowitz. I'm an acupuncture physician and a doctor of Oriental medicine. Like Danielle, I've been in practice for quite a while. I've been in private practice for 22 years. And, my focus with acupuncture has always been on holistic healing, right? Because you can't be healthy in one aspect of your life and have other areas that don't work and really consider yourself to be healthy, in my opinion. I think a lot of people try and do that. They really focus on, oh, well, this area is really great, so it doesn't matter if those areas aren't so good. And really, to me, health is a holistic thing. So if you're not balanced physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, then you don't really have access to health. And my journey into discovering that was when my balance went out. When I was 15, my physical health balance went out and I got juvenile diabetes. And learning how to navigate that whole world and how to take care of myself and how to actually find myself again, because the diabetes really actually impacted my self-esteem as well. So it was in that whole journey that I discovered how to heal yourself from disease, which, disease is this big, heavy, scary word in this world, but dis-ease is where I focus on more, which is discomfort of the body, of the mind, of the spirit, of the emotions. And you can't cure people, in my opinion, but you can help people to heal.
Thank you, Eli. Wow. So as you can see, we have a very wide set of perspectives here. So we're going to get a very full range of conversation for health and wellness. So let's see here. Marina, would you like to start us off with the question of some of the problems that you're seeing that are leaving people in chronic states of disease or poor health and toxicity, and what can be done about it?
As a trauma-informed therapist, what I see as the root cause is unresolved trauma. And anyone who dares to say that they haven't experienced trauma is probably not alive, because just the experience of being born as a baby is traumatic, regardless of the circumstances of the birth. So trauma really is the underlying problem, I believe. And most people are walking around like ticking time bombs. They are triggered by every little thing. They have an overreaction in their emotional response because of those triggers and unresolved experiences that they had probably in childhood. And so they find themselves overwhelmed, stressed out, and turning to what I call avoidance strategies, like substances. For example, turning to drinking alcohol, turning to using drugs, turning to partying, turning to binge watching Netflix, whatever it takes to avoid feeling what you're feeling. And that, I believe, is at the core of the problem, because as Bessel van der Kolk says, and he's a famous trauma-based psychiatrist, he says in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, that we store trauma in the body. And that's why it's important to get acupuncture, to get, body-centered therapies, including like what I use as a practitioner. I use emotional freedom technique or tapping. That is a form of self-acupuncture. And it's very empowering to have a tool like that you can use at any time. And so we need to liberate these trapped emotions from the body. And most of the time, when we're using these avoidance strategies, instead of liberating these emotions, we're sending them deeper into our subconscious mind, and we're creating a bigger problem than has to be there. And that's when you turn to hypnotherapy, because hypnotherapy can bypass the analytical mind and go straight into the subconscious mind, where all of these traumatic memories and limiting beliefs and unsupportive behaviors that you decided upon at an earlier age, that's where it's all stored. That is the driving force. And so if you want to empower yourself to make better, healthier choices in life, the key is to deal with your trauma instead of avoiding it.
Awesome. Thank you, Marina. I got you touched upon the solutions. Actually, I just realized it's good because I asked it, but everyone's going to go around. We're going to talk about the problems and we'll dive into the solutions. Thank you for that. That's really great. Like understanding the trapped emotions in the body. And I have a feeling Eli has something he wants to say to this.
I do. I just wanted to add, when you were mentioning that, and I'm sure all of us here on the panel know this already, but, when you're a child, right? Unfortunately, you make decisions, you make decisions when you're a child. And the decisions you make when you're a child are not always logical as an adult, right? So for instance, like when you're a child, if you are abused physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, whatever it might be, you don't usually think, oh, what a nasty adult that did that to me. Your thing is, why was I too weak to fight that person off? Or what was wrong with me that I didn't think what they were doing was wrong somehow, right? And so no matter what it is, as a child, the things that happen to us, we never perceive those as, we perceive those always as our fault. We're at the source of it. And as an adult, it's absolutely essential that we go back and do that work. There's many different ways to do that trauma work, right? Like Marie, you were talking about one way, which is with emotion, with hypnotherapy. That's a great way. And probably each one of us has our own way of doing that. And I won't even get into my way right now, but I think dealing with that trauma though, and healing and addressing that inner child, because unless we heal that inner child, this is a crazy thing of life, we actually set our lives up as such a way that unconsciously we set up scenarios to prove that so if we're weak, we will set up unconsciously scenarios in life over and over and over that will prove to us that we're weak. That's how powerful our subconscious mind is. So I heard that, Nathan, and I wanted to hope that forwards the conversation.
This is beautiful. So what we're going to do now, I think Ronnie has a lot of insight from his perspective, and then we'll talk about the impact on relationships with Danielle. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Thanks. Before I'm answering the question, I want to bring to more awareness two remarks. One of the remarks is about awareness. Nathan, you used the word in the beginning, like maybe our mission or our target is to bring more awareness. But sometimes in my field, many of the patient people are aware about the connection between emotional and their behavior. So why they are eating without being hungry, they know, and they can connect it to their history, and still they're eating without being hungry. So awareness sometimes cannot help many people that, they don't have their first floor in their self built. So the awareness is like second floor, but if you don't have your first floor, very solid, it just collapses. So awareness is not the end, or sometimes it's not enough. So maybe I will speak later about self-psychology and what we are doing in this paradigm. So, awareness in that paradigm is not the center of this approach. And we will talk about that later. And what Eli said about, the holistic attitude, sometimes I'm saying that maybe the only protocol I have in my work is that if you want to be different, if you want a different relationship with food and eating, you need to be different. And so what does it mean to be different? And like Ila said, it's actually meaning that you will be different in every part of your lifestyle. You cannot be just in this area different, and you can expect that everything will become different. So actually it's very holistic. And to answer your question, I think the most dominant connection to obesity and emotional eating that I see in my clinic for the last 15 years, it's about emotional neglect. So emotional neglect, as I see it, it's a sort of violence. Maybe it's not physical violence, maybe it's not, emotional violence, or even, sexual violence, but it's very hidden. Sometimes it's very hard to detect this sort of violence. It's very, tricky. So many of my patients, maybe it's, part of my story also, that we had, in our childhood, everything. What I mean about everything, we had food, we had, car, we had money. No, we didn't, have much money, but we had enough. And we went to school, and we went to program, and we did our degree and everything. But no one actually listened to us. No one actually hold us, contain us, protect us from the emotional aspect. And I see 20 years later, those people, that say, my childhood was just fine. And I'm asking, what do you mean fine? Like someone protect you, someone hold you, someone contain you, someone, guide you through life? No. All right. So I very slowly and very gradually with those people that want to dive in to see the connection between emotional neglect and their emotional eating and their obesity, and to see how the food can guide them, contain them, protect them, how the fat itself, these 20, 30, 40 pounds can contain them, can protect them. Many women speaking about the fear to be attractive. Many men talk about, the fear to be number one, to be in the center, that they will have, a lot of duties. So it's only those people that want to see the connection between those kind of very, very hidden violence and their eating pattern habits can dive in and to start working and really do changes in their lives.
Wow, so this whole thing's connected. Like there's so much there. Like I don't have like an eating problem, but I can relate with everything you just shared. And it's just so universal that the source of the problem, it all seems to stem from the same place. And I think we're going to get an interesting perspective from Danielle, because I think a lot of these problems end up ultimately rolling downhill into relational breakdown. So Danielle, would you like to share how this all ties in with relationships?
Sure. Thank you, Nathan. So I'm going to first start with that relationships are the number one, the quality of our relationships, according to the research, really determines our health and our happiness. And as Eli and Ronnie and Marina have all said, it's a very holistic approach to it. When we're looking at relationships, we often think of, well, in regards to our bodies, exercising daily is important. We all know that as a general fact, right? That we need to take care of our bodies. We also know that eating healthy, we always are trying to eat healthy on a daily basis. We're making an effort. We kind of can distinguish between when we're not eating healthy and when we are. And especially if some people have hired coaches to do that. But when it comes to our relationships, the question is how are we nourishing our relationships daily? Because they found from a long running study at Harvard that the people that lived the longest were those that were in really good relationships over a lifetime. Whether they were married or not, it didn't necessarily matter. It mattered the quality of their friendships and the quality of their relationships with their family, a combination of both or one. So what I really think is important is that we are learning how to nourish our relationships daily and the skills and tools to do that so that we can really have a sense of health and well-being from a very holistic perspective. And when I'm looking at, and I forget the exact question that you asked, Nathan, in regards, but I really see it as 3 red flags. And of course there's more, but this is a short panel. So I narrowed it to 3. And the first one being broken boundaries. So toxic relationships, for a lack of a better word right now. And I know we're talking about some things to actually just be aware of in relationships are when boundaries are broken and when agreements are broken. So we want to look, when in our relationships have we noticed when boundaries have been broken or our agreements have been broken? And has there been repair that's happened? And we want our repair to be quite quick, because the longer it goes, now we can take time away and calm down and come back into the green zone. If we're in the red zone, which is just fight or flight, we can kind of settle back down. The other aspect is not protecting our relationship from outside forces, such as exes. What is our agreement even with our exes? Do we see our exes when we're in this relationship, or do we have to have our partner there? What is that agreement? Cell phones, that's a distraction. So these distractions from the relationship is the person on the cell phone when you're out to dinner, Or is that okay with you? So, but we want to always be noticing outside distractions, even family. So that's another distraction from the relationship. So the relationship I'm talking about, it's you, me, and then the relationship is its own entity. So how are we protecting that and creating a bubble to keep that relationship safe? Because we all thrive in safe, secure relationships. And that's what we're trying to create. And then third is, again, knowing how to repair. So when we fall out of relationship or have a breakdown in our relationship, are we able to quickly repair? Are we able to rebuild quickly? And be sensitive to our partner if they do ask for space, but making sure the brain loves predictability. So if we are going to say, I need space right now, I am just still in the red zone, I just need a day or two, that's still maintaining relationship, that's still repairing. It's just saying, I need some space, but you're keeping your partner safe and them not going into the red zone, because you're saying, hey, I'll get back to you. Here's when we can reconnect. So now they're feeling safe. Okay, they haven't abandoned me. They haven't up and left, and you're left like, where did they go? They're saying, I'll get back to you. I just need some time to cool myself down and I'll be back. And when we go back into that conversation, the important part of that is not necessarily recalling every event, because the brain is very bad at recall. It's actually to say, hey, if I were to do this differently, this is what I would do. And the other person, if I were to do this differently, this is what I would do. That's a great way to re-enter conversation, especially difficult conversation, because we're cleaning up our side of the street. We're owning our part in the conflict.
That's awesome. Thank you, Danielle. You know, what's interesting is relationship gets impacted by the trauma and these emotional aspects. But what's interesting is relationship is also feeding back into, and I want to hear from Ronnie, because I have a feeling, how much of people who are addicted to overeating and the emotional aspect of obesity, is it stemming from broken relationships? Just out of curiosity.
Many, they coming from, very, tough relationship with their parents, and it's very hard for them to engage a healthy relationship. Most of them, are in toxic relationship, very violent relationship. Yeah, it's like, but again, I want to be not positive, but optimistic that there is hope. Like we say, hope for healing, but you need to work, and it's a lifelong, journey.
Thank you, Ronnie. So I think we'll each have about 4 or 5 minutes to share about solutions. Yeah, Eli, you want to add to that?
I just wanted to add, it's amazing how the physical and emotional are all so interconnected, right? Because when Danielle was talking about, I'm just listening to her from a Chinese perspective, right? And so when there's sadness in the Chinese perspective, it affects the lungs. And the lungs are your ability to breathe, your ability to interact with the world around you. And look, you can even see this. When you're sad, your ability to interact with people is diminished, right? There's like your energy is lower. It's like it takes so much more to be able to talk to somebody. And, when you're angry in Chinese medicine, it affects the liver. And the anger of the liver, it's about, you feel all bound up and jammed up. And so it is just really, I'm just listening to everybody, Marina's aspect and Ronnie, and it just really is, it really gets me even more and more present to how whole health truly, I know we've all said it's a holistic thing, but it really is a holistic thing. Like, if you're not managing your physical health, then your ability, like Marina was saying, your emotions get lodged in your body, right? And that's why it's important to do things like acupuncture and other techniques. But then your eating affects your body, and then your thoughts, and it's like, it just really is this amazing. So it's really finding this balance where you can have them all complement each other or work synergistically with each other, as opposed to, you know, what happens, I think, for a lot of people is they get really focused on one area, and that's the area that they either really, because even if you're thriving, like even if your huge focus is you're so healthy physically, usually you're letting something else go. And I know I kind of said that before, but it's just really present to me, this balance of the holistic balance in order to really have well-being. You know, like forget about health, you know, well-being. Like what is well-being for people?
Mhm. Yeah, when you said that, Eli, the image that came to mind are the people who go to gym yoga classes, or just only do the physical aspect of yoga, or only practice the physical aspect of yoga. And that is so common here in the West, that, you know, I saw it living in New York City. Most studios only offered the asanas, which are the physical poses, but that's 1/8 of yoga. Patanjali, the father of yoga, talked about how there are 8 limbs of yoga. And one of those limbs is how you treat others, your relationship to others. And another one of those limbs is how you breathe, pranayam, which means breath control. And another limb is mindfulness practice, such as meditation. So, like here in the West, we just focus on the physical and the material, not the unseen, not the spiritual, but we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And it's just as important to focus on that aspect.
Thank you, Marina. I love what you're talking about with the holistic solutions, and we're all basically holistically minded people. But I want to ask if someone wants to step up to the plate and like acknowledge the things that are good about Western medicine, and then bridge it into what you do, because I don't want to just sidestep and just pretend it's just Eastern. There's actually benefits to Western. Does anyone want to speak to that?
Well, I can speak to it because I've benefited from Western medicine when I had a neck injury and ended up needing to get surgery for it. And up until that point, I did not believe in surgery. I had never had any kind of surgery. And I luckily found an amazing neurosurgeon who did a laser disc repair on my neck. And he is the reason that I am able to be here with you all today. And he's the reason that I'm still able to practice yoga and to walk and to talk and to sit comfortably without experiencing nerve pain. So I absolutely agree with you. There is a role that Western medicine plays, and it's just as important as the Eastern approach.
I want to share also like very close and similar story that in the age 30, I had a slip disc in my lower back, L5-S1, and I had a surgery, very new back then, 20 years ago. And I remember asking the surgeon for how many years it will, you know, last. The surgeon told me 10 years. And actually, after 10 years, I was in Los Angeles, and I was, you know, in very, you know, very stressed situation, and it's happened again. And I went to see the Sana in LA, and, you know, they gave me drugs, and, you know, very, you know, they did their work, but they told me that, you know, the doctor told me that he feel that I did in the last 10 years. I don't know how he knew that. That I did, you know, all different kind of work that now I will cure myself in a short term, and I will be back to my, you know, everyday, you know, routine very, very soon. So I feel that my work, those 10 years, you know, doing all sort of spiritual work, went together with the, you know, Western, you know, medicine. You know, I think, yeah, we need to go together. And it's actually sometimes the word integration is, for me, it's not accurate. It's oneness, because as I said, there's not body and mind. There is one. I'm practicing for the last 12 years Vipassana the way Goenka taught this kind of vipassana. And actually, when you go very, very deep to listen and be equanimity with your physical sensation, you see that, you know, what we call, you know, I, it's actually bubbles, you know. So, but it's like direct experience. You don't, you know, if you will read about that from an article, it's not the same thing as, you know, direct experience. And I want to say one more thing about empathy. You know, the word empathy, this is the main word in self-psychology paradigm. So empathy, sometimes they say, you know, he's very empathy person. So they laugh, you know, about, you know, empathy. So empathy, it's not about being nice. Empathy, although it's, you know, it's nice to be a nice person, but it's not about being nice. Empathy, it's not sympathy. Empathy, it's not compassion. Empathy, it's ability that you dissolve to other person. You can become a self-object to the, you know, to your friend, to your brother, or to your patient. It's actually walking in their shoes, all right, in a person's shoes. And this is the, as I see it, maybe the only way that a person will try and, you know, try and walk on his very subjective and individualistic way, only if a person can see him from inside. So it's not a seminar about self-psychology, but I think we wrongly use sometimes the word empathy. And I feel that, you know, speaking about empathy, it's very, very important everywhere, in the Eastern, in the Western society, it doesn't matter.
Wow.
That's an excellent point, Ronnie. Sorry to interrupt you, Nathan. I just wanted to say, like, a lot of times people say, I'm sorry this happened to you. That's an example of sympathy. Empathy is, I can see or I can hear the anguish that you're feeling. I can see and hear, you know, the grief that you're going through. That's an example of empathy. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. Well, real quick, I wanna pull Danielle into this, because this is like one of those pillars for relationships, I feel. And I love what you guys are doing, dissolving like the separation between body, mind, the separation between health and relationships. Like it really is all one system. We are the ones that put language to them as distinct things, but it's all influencing itself in of itself. So it's all connected. Danielle, empathy, compassion. I know it's not the same, Ronnie, but these are things that you bring into relationships. How does that impact a relationship, and where do you start to really develop empathy in relationships?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll address it like this. Thank you, Nathan. Empathy is being able to feel what the other person is feeling or have some idea of it. Compassion is being able to not be in it with them, but to be able to hold them in their own issues going on. So a lot of times there's a big movement happening right now around nurses that are caretaking all the time and being empathetic, but then they get what's called empathy burnout, right? So being able to say, I'm sorry you're going through this, and I'm here with you, and I love you, even if it's energetic and you're doing it, that holds them, but it removes you from actually carrying the weight of what they're going through. So I think it's important to have both empathy and compassion in relationship, even that you're not taking on what's going to your partner, but you're able to stay with them, because the compassion part allows us to stay with people. The empathy is what burns us out. Because if we're always and you hear a lot of healers talk about this, they're like, I can just feel everything, but we have to be able to know. And I worked with some great people in my own training with compassion. And I said, well, how do you transition from empathy to compassion? And the response that I got was that you get to a point where you're able to feel where they're coming from and then say, I want to be with you. How can I support you with this? So we move away from I'm feeling this, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling what you're feeling. That's good. That's the start. But then we have to be able to, if we really are able to be present with them, to hold them in it. We don't want to take it on. And I know that that's not what Ronnie and Marina were talking about, but I'm just clarifying that because it's really important in relationship that we're not taking on what our partner or our friends or our family is going through, but we can stay, we're more likely to be present if we can move in compassion. I hope that was clear.
No, that's very clear. Ronnie,
Okay.
do you want to continue to expand on the empathy, or would you like Eli to kind of bridge it into his conversation?
Thinking, about empathy. I didn't expect that we will speak so much about empathy. It's one of my favorite topic, but actually how I see empathy, it's like if I succeed to be empath to a patient or person, it's not an emotion or emotional. It's a state. Like it's like Ronnie gone. If Ronnie, is, so there's no empathy. Just when Ronnie just gone somewhere, the empathy can be, in the room. Actually, I remember a patient that told me, I need you with me in the fire. You're not entering the fire with me. I need you there. I need you to feel exactly what I feel, what I felt. And she was asking, for empathy, for many, many, she was 7 years with me. I think in the first 3 or 4 years, I couldn't. It was too much for me to feel. She was, orphan, she was adopted, a lot of story. But, through my, studying the self-psychology paradigm, it's actually it's not about studying. It's more about doing meditation, speaking with, like you people, other kind of people that understand all of that. I think I improve my empathy capability, and I need to choose when and where, I choose to be empathic to my child, to my baby child. I want to be like 100% empathy, but I don't want, I have another patient say, Ronnie, I don't want you to be for 8 billion people empathy. I don't want you to be like that, and she's right. I can't, I'm not Buddha, but, this is something about empathy. And I want to say something else about, there are people, patients, that being in a psychotherapy relationship, it's very, very, very hard for them. They don't have the ability to trust. They are sometimes a little bit paranoid. So I think that for them, there's like other routes for healing, because as I see the healing, healing process as a second chance for growing. The first time was, maybe terrible, but we can offer the second time, the second chance. So if a person cannot do therapy, maybe it can be in the nature. In Israel, maybe in America also, there's many, many therapies, many, many school of therapy that it's like, we call it nature therapy. We take people to the nature, to the trees, to the mountain, and the nature itself can heal many, many people that speaking with other people, it's very hard for them. And the second maybe direction is art. People can do art. People through dancing, acting, painting, it doesn't matter. They can invent their art, can heal himself. Actually, one of the most, there's a chapter named Emotional Starvation by Michael Eigen, and his patient, Sheila, in the end of this chapter, she became an artist, actress, sorry. And so, it's part of her healing. And maybe the third, I'm calling it the transpersonal, something that is bigger than you and can you you can be part of. It can be like a group, can be your religion. It could be, like Depeche Mode singing your own personal Jesus. Doesn't matter. You can invent your own personal Jesus. And it's you as a therapist, you need to be open. Not just as a therapist, you need to be open because everyone needs their own subjective healing path.
Oh, Ronnie, I like that. Personal Jesus. I'm taking that with me. This conversation went so fast, and there was other topics I want to talk about. And I love that we got deep on this empathy thing, and we've seen all these different angles. I want to let Eli talk about stagnation because he's talking about dis-ease, really breaking that down. And then we're going to do some summary points about what the future for health and wellness looks like, and that'll be the whole panel. Eli, I'll give you like 3 minutes. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, everything everybody was creating, right? So there's the stagnation. Well, the one thing that Nathan's pointing out, I think, is I often mention in Chinese medicine, stagnation or a lack of movement is at the root of all disease. And I mean, look, I think that applies in a mental state, an emotional state, and in a physical state, right? If you're not moving, things are deteriorating. And so there's got to be movement. There's got to be some people think that if you just wait, you can wait till things happen. And if you look at the universe that we live in, when things sit, they don't stay the same. They actually deteriorate. This universe moves like that. So not being in movement actually has you regressing. It's a trap. We actually have to be constantly up to something in life. And it also, I think that's what pulls us forward. It's like when you don't have something that's propelling you forward every day, then you get into these monotonous type of repetitive motions, right? And as that could look like a lot of ways, just being on autopilot in life, right? And like I noticed that when I'm on autopilot in life, I'm not experiencing the richness of life. And that can be in relationships, that can be food, that can be whatever it is. But when I'm on autopilot, I'm usually in my head and I'm not engaged with life. And that's when, it's talk about stagnation. I don't know if any of you out there ever experienced like an entire week or even 2 weeks or even a month of your life that you could barely differentiate one day from the other. And you're just like, wow, life is just going by. And I would point out that that's because you're on autopilot. You can actually do your morning, afternoon, and evening routines, probably most of us, with our eyes closed. And there's no richness in that. And that is a form of stagnation. It's a form of not being engaged. And part of the richness of life is being present. So, as we choose to engage with life, we get the opportunity to experience the richness of life. And, I don't know if you're going there, Nathan, but one of the solutions that I love for that, which is just so simple, is just force yourself out of autopilot. Come present every day. And some people say, well, how do you do that? Well, it can be so simple. You know how you brush your teeth and you always start with the top left tooth or top left quadrant? Start with the bottom right. You'll be out of autopilot that quick. It's about being present in life, right? And toxicity, a lot of that too is that we're not present to what we're feeding ourselves. See, toxicity can be unconsciousness too. It's not just always bad things, but it's being unconscious.
So Eli, you actually are bridging into the final question. And since you already started answering it, I'll give you like another minute. I just want to ask you, so the question is like, what are the solutions people can stand in that they can take action on right now, which you already created a solution, I'm sharing for them. And then what does that make available for the future of a person's health by embracing that? So Eli, what's like your vision for the future in terms of people being mindful and having and the impact on their health?
Well, the future is that, so people are never going to, health challenges, whether they're spiritual, mentally, emotional, they're never going to go away. But I believe what's can be possible for people is that people see these challenges as an opportunity rather than as a burden. So, every single person will constantly have challenges. And the moment that you give up that the challenges are a problem that are looking to prevent you from something and start viewing them as an opportunity that is promoting you and projecting you into growth and into a world that you maybe could have never imagined, well, then that changes everything.
Wow, thank you, Eli. We're just gonna keep moving because we're pretty much at the end, but Danielle, would you like to share about solutions and then the vision for the future with people and their thriving relationships?
Yes. I think I want to just kind of summarize a little bit because I think it ties into relationships quite nicely about the empathy, compassion, and self-compassion, because it really is kind of a wheel. Because self-compassion is, can I be kind to myself even in the most difficult situation? Can I be tender to this creature inside of me? Right? Empathy, as I understand it, is the ability to tune into another person's suffering, right? And compassion, not self-compassion. Compassion is, I'm sorry for what that you're suffering right now, and how can I help you? How can I help you? The only way we can deepen in both, I believe, and from what I've studied, is to actually have more deep self-compassion. That is the only way, because that is the part of us that tunes into our own suffering, our own hurt, our own pain. Therefore, I can be tuned into your pain. And I can also sit with you and not take it on. So I think that's essential in a relationship. I think it's often why people run from relationship. I think they get scared. They don't know how to handle it. They become overwhelmed. So I think that's super important. In regards to the future of relationships, I think what is also super important is that we build a foundation. No matter where we are in our relationships, we build an understanding with our partner that we have agreements. We each come up with our own agreements. We then decide which agreements are going to be our foundation to our relationship. And with that being said, then there are no double standards when we agree, and we have to agree on the agreements, meaning it can't just be kind of okay for you. It has to be a hell yes for you. This is my hell yes agreement number 1. This is my hell yes agreement number 2. And this is my hell yes agreement number 3. And that they actually cannot be double standards unless you agree to the double standard. Okay. So that is how I see and hope that people will go about relationships in the future for the well-being and the health of the relationship, that we set up a foundation. If we didn't have a foundation to our home it wouldn't stay up very long. And it also helps to hold yourself and the other person accountable when the boundaries are broken. You didn't uphold the agreement. That hurt. I feel hurt when these boundaries are broken. Then you have something to come back to. You have another negotiation. You can recreate and build the foundation again. Maybe you have to adjust the agreement. So I see that is a fabulous way to really build relationship and to also be responsible adults to the relationship.
Wow, that's cool, Danielle. You really brought a lot of power to that. That's awesome. We'll probably, just so you guys know, we have a meditation at 12:30, but we might run like 3 minutes over. And I know Bethany, the person leading the meditations, in the attendee list, so I just want to let her know that. And you guys have like 2.5 minutes approximately, but Marina, your final, actually, Eli, you already did yours, so we can just split it. Yeah, 2.5 minutes. Marina, for you?
So what I'd like to add to the brilliant points Danielle just made is that we cannot come to a place of such assertiveness where we're clear on our agreements unless we first deal with the childhood attachment issues and whatever beliefs are standing or getting in the way of our being clear, direct communicators and having the confidence to know what our standard is in relationship. And that lesson took me a lifetime to learn. So I'm not speaking just from the perspective of the therapy expert, but from my own personal growth experience. Danielle, do you want to say something?
That was so important, Marina, what you were saying. And I really think that's the differentiation between, do I hire a therapist or do I hire a coach? If there is other underlying traumas that are preventing you to standing in your voice or being able, whatever it is, Marina, I think that's what you're speaking to. If there are these traumas that are blocking us from being able to function in some ways, right? That is the difference. Coaching is focused forward. Therapy also goes back into the past and helps to rework some of the things out.
Yeah. It's really important to focus on healing the inner child. And what that means is reparenting yourself. Start changing your relationship from being the authoritarian parent that maybe you actually had as a child to being more of an authoritative parent, a parent who sets boundaries, but also explains why they're there, a parent who really listens and holds space, who doesn't invalidate the child's feelings, a parent who role models healthy conscious communication skills and healthy conscious discipline. That is the kind of parent you need to start being to yourself, because most of us come from families of origin where nobody read a book, no one got a PhD, no one got an instructional manual on how to be a conscious parent. And so we were parented the way our parents were parented. And so the multi-generational pattern continues in this way. So oftentimes, most of us are walking around with a core limiting belief, which is, I'm not enough. That can show up as, I'm not good enough, therefore, I'm gonna be okay with being victimized all the time. I'm not good enough, therefore, I'm going to curb my opportunities when it comes to career growth and progression. I'm not good enough, therefore, I'm not even going to try to put myself out there because I have such social anxiety, I might as well just stay home. I'm not good enough, therefore, why should I even try to go after my dreams? I'm just going to stay in the status quo. This shows up in so many different ways. And the not good enough belief is like a weed that makes the whole garden very not pretty. And it's a weed that needs to be uprooted with different methods. Hypnotherapy is a very effective method for uprooting it. EFT, emotional freedom technique, another very effective method for uprooting that core belief. But the bottom line is, you need to work on the level of belief, because our beliefs create our personal reality. And if you want your personal reality to be different, you need to start changing how you see the world and how you speak to yourself.
Wow, that's a solid point. So we're going to run like 2 minutes over, but Ronnie, I want to give you the same opportunity everyone has to summarize and create, what the future looks like for health.
So 2 issues. One, you used the word disease, and for many, many years, I used the term, like the Depeche Mode song, shake the disease. So I hope, talking about emotional eating and the emotional aspect of obesity, I believe that if I will shake my patient disease, they will be cured or healed or whatever. But in the last 10 years, I see it in a different way. Maybe I will call it live those disease quietly. So I'm not touching the disease. I believe that if I'm working with the self, if I'm looking and finding the true self area, the natural self area, and enlarge them, bringing more light to those areas, something will happen to those diseases. They will, step by step, gradually fade away, disappear. They will change. So I'm not working directly on the disease. I'm not forgetting them. I'm not ignoring them. I'm not in the accepting, paradigm. I'm not accepting anything. But I know, I see the disease, but I'm not, fighting the disease. So this is, one point. And second, in your country, it's also in Israel, but your huge country, there are 100 million people suffering from overweight and obesity. And I'm speaking in the last few years with many professional American. I didn't find many colleagues, talking, speaking, working about the emotional aspect of obesity. I met a lot of therapists working with anorexia and bulimia, but anorexia and bulimia, it's like this 1%. It's not like 30% of the American population. And also I found many psychologists, social worker, coaches working with people before and after bariatric surgery. Although it's very, very important, again, it's not the majority. As I see in the future, many therapists from all over, different kind of, what they study need to be more aware and to engage more the emotional aspect of obesity. And if those therapists, professionals, will consider to become expert therapists in this field, 100 million people suffering in America from, this epidemic. So I think in 10 years, 20 years, something maybe will be different in your country, also in my country. And I see maybe in the future also hospital, clinic, universities will be engaged more in this topic. So we can see maybe departments in hospital, they are not just eating disorder, department. They are not just obesity. They will maybe they will just engage the emotional aspects of obesity. And I see this is, my mission, both in my country and in your country.
Thank you, Ronnie. I really appreciate that extra perspective. We're going to bring kind of an abrupt close here to the health panel, and we'll have more discussions like this. That was a very rich conversation. I'm going to let Bethany in as a panelist as we're going to transition to the meditation. I want to thank you each for being here. You're welcome to stay for this, or you're welcome to go. Ronnie, I know it's Saturday evening for you, so thank you for spending your time with us, and we'll talk soon.